And here we are. Welcome back to Redshirt Sophomore, where we never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. CD, what is going on? It is conference championship recaps. We had college football playoff selection. We have bowl games. There's a lot going on. But what are we doing today? We're just recapping conference championship weekend and maybe talking a little college football playoff selection, of course. And maybe some other things as we see fit. How about that? How does that sound?
You nailed it. What a freaking weekend it was. Not only were the games, and the problem is with all this other drama going on, like the games were actually awesome. That Washington Oregon game was great. Bama Georgia was great. Louisville Florida State was not pretty, but I really enjoyed watching that game. I thought like two defensive teams, defensive game, like a defensive game, like battling out. That was fun. Yeah, a lot of good football, a lot of like great players shined. You love it. I mean, it's postseason, like good stuff's supposed to happen. A lot of good football around, even on our G5 as well.
Yeah, and some upsets too. I think more so than like we've had in normal conference championship weekends. Like I feel like conference championship weekends, as weird as this sounds, it's pretty chalky for the most part because you have the best teams in the country playing in the conference championship, right? So those teams like they're good enough to just win, right? But when you have a team like Georgia playing against Alabama, right? I mean those are two titans in that aspect. You're gonna have an upset there. And then SMU with the backup quarterback, another upset there. You had Washington, almost 10-point underdogs coming up, beating Oregon and punching their ticket to the college football playoffs. So pretty crazy stuff. And Ohio, how about that? 11 games that team won this year without Brett Gabbert.
Incredible. Incredible. The Red Hawks, man, they let me tell you, Minnesota was supposed to get them in a bowl game. There was one scenario where that happened. I was terrified. I was terrified to play
Good
either of
ball
those MAC
club.
teams.
Good ball
Defensively, I
club.
mean, they're so good. I mean, there's no way we're scoring more than Toledo scored on them, right?
Yeah, I
There's no
mean,
way.
yeah, they shut down Penny Boone and they shut down Daquan Finn. I mean that's just what it is. So um but yeah, so we got what is that, 10 games we recapped this week. We picked 10 games in our previews. So let's just dive in. Let's see how we did, you know. Well, it was a pretty good week for us. You went even, Steven, 5-5, straight up winners, and 5-5 ATS, which puts you at 85-32 on the year in terms of winners, beating me in winners. And you know what? You went 5-5, but you stayed positive on the year, at 60-53 ATS, which is good. 53%. You're gonna take that every day. You're up. What is that? 2 units right there. That's all you can ask for. That's all you can ask for. And again, we're making these picks we don't have any edge, right? We're making these picks on Wednesday night, right? So like lines have already moved. I mean, it's chaos, and we're positive that that's a great year. Any we'll have bowl games too, but this is it for regular season and conference championship. How do you feel your season went?
I mean, there was a rough stretch in that middle there where I like late October, early November, I had just no idea what was going on, right? In all these games. And I was just kind of like, I was wrong. I was wrong. And obviously, the more you learn about teams, I kind of finished strong the end of November there, which was good to see. But yeah, it was really fun. I mean, obviously, picking these games, not putting money on them. It's just for pride and for just being able to talk about these games and giving you guys a feel of like, hey, how we leaning, how we feel here about this game, you know?
Yeah, no, I get it. I think you had a great season. I mean, straight up, like winners, you had 2 weeks where you went 9-0. You parlay
Could
those. That is stupid. That is
next
stupid.
year, next year I gotta start just parlaying my money lines and see what happens, you know.
Yeah, see if you can just hit one. I might tail you because you did it twice, not once. You did it twice this year, so that's pretty dang good if you don't know. And then for myself, I had an unbelievable week, right? And I went into it going, I don't have a great feel for these games, but turns out I was feeling pretty good. So 7-3 straight up winners. My only losses being Georgia, Oregon, and Toledo, which you also lost on those games as well. Our only differences were I had FSU covering and winning. You had Louisville covering and winning. I had SMU winning straight up, and you had Tulane's winning straight up in terms of the head-to-head winners right there. And then What put me over the edge, ATS, is the two middlers that I had. I had Georgia and Bama middling there, and Bama ended up covering and winning straight up in Miami of Ohio. Ended up covering and winning straight up. So I went 9-1 ATS, which puts me at 66-47 on the year, which 58%. If you were to tail these picks, which I'm not advising that you should have by any means,
No.
you'd be up 13 units, which is pretty substantial. So I would say this will never be replicated probably for the rest of this podcast's existence. But I'm going to say that I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. And I had a phenomenal season. Pat on the back, pat on the back. And the thing about that is, though, it's like early on, I struggled ATS bad. And that's reflected in my preseason over-under win totals. When we go back and look at those, you did a lot better than I did. And I'm normally pretty money on those. I did not do a good job on those, to be honest. So I'm more proud of the fact that I made adjustments. And I started seeing the board late. I was on fire. I think I had winning weeks the last like 6 weeks, which is pretty wild. So just got to put the hands together for that one, put it together. So to recap, you beat me in the winners straight up 85-32. You were at, which I believe is like 75% or something like that, which is pretty absurd. And then I was 83-34, which I think was 73 or something like that. And then ATS, I was 66-47. You were 60-53. Both, if you're on the plus side of 70 for the winners straight up, and we are over 52% ATS, that's a win. I think we did awesome this year. Something that wasn't as amazing necessarily was Dawson's Diner. I did another one of those things where I added something late on Twitter, like right before the game started, Oregon, Washington. I'm like, oh, this is the last Pac-12 game. I have to have a Dawson's Diner play on it. I took Dylan Johnson under 83.5 rushing yards. Yeah, he doubled that total almost and threw a passing touchdown as well. So, I mean, that dude is a stud. My idea, though, was I thought Oregon was going to get up early and Wisconsin or Washington was going to be in panic mode and going to have to chuck the ball down the field, and Dylan Johnson wasn't going to have his touches. Not to mention the fact that Oregon's run defense has been really good all year. They may have not played the best rushing offenses, but that was the idea in there. But then the ones that you guys caught on the show earlier the week, Michigan -22, which ended up dropping to -21.5, and then Troy -5.5, which ended up dropping to 5 in some places as well. Both of those cashed pretty easily too. I mean, Michigan, you could argue there were some referees that were in our favor a little bit there, which is pretty awesome. Love to have that. Love to have the referees in your pocket, right? But yeah, Troy was not even a sweat, and we were all over that. So overall, Dawson's Diner was 36-33 on the year, losing 0.16 units. Just tough because there were 2 picks that I forgot to add that forgot to post on Twitter. And then also just a couple of late ads, like right before kickoff, that were just unnecessary. I need to be more disciplined in that. And for that, I'm sorry, guys. Don't know what to tell you.
I
Don't
would
know what to
also
tell
like
you.
to throw in back in what was it, like March or May, whenever that Boise State, I'm sorry, not Boise State, whenever that Washington and Michigan State
Oh, it was
line came out.
June. Well, I took it in like May, but it was in June when we started the podcast and started talking about it.
Yeah, and so I would like to. I'll give you the props. That'll push you over to to the green there. But yeah, I thought yeah, I thought it was a good year. I mean, it's fun. Obviously, Dawson's Diner. Obviously, we don't recommend you betting these games, whatever. But it's nice to see like where your head's at, where you're trying to find value, and you did a lot this year where you see where these lines closed at, right? You're just on the wrong side of variance. We talked about that a lot this year, where like next year's our year, you know.
Yeah. And also, not to mention, like about 5 weeks ago, we were down 5 units. So I think we had winning weeks 4 of the last 5 weeks that we had. So, uh, good adjustments there once again. So, but that'll be back. That'll be back for bowl season, by the way. So that Dawson's Diner is not over for the season. If you think that's the end of Dawson's Diner season, you're wrong. Because bowl season, that is where you can find some crazy, crazy value and also get absolutely rocked. So,
You have no idea
like, but if you stay tuned, you know how to look at these games. You know how to look at these games. I'm
who shows up, who doesn't.
not the, I did win the Dawson bull pool last year, and it wasn't even close. Just
We'll
to
see. We'll see
just
this
to throw
year.
that out there. Just to throw that out there. All right. Well, what do you say we get into the actual games we previewed?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Start off, let's go Oregon, Washington. The last Pac-12 championship, the last Pac-12 matchup ever. Uh, this was an absolute awesome game. I mean, look, Washington got up early. It was 20-10. It was looking pretty hopeless for Oregon. Bo Nix's Heisman was slipping through his fingers, slipping through his fingers. And then you know what? They rallied back and they took a lead,
Yeah,
right?
they,
Or
and
did
that,
they?
I, that that's when I was. They did, and that's when I was ready. They scored 21 straight, I believe it was, that to go up 24-20. It was that big drive at the end of the first half for Bo Nix, where the chunk play to Tez Watson or to Tez Johnson. I'm sorry, Tez Johnson, and and then they ended up scoring there with the tight end. I believe Ferguson got the touchdown there. But yeah, it was they battled in this game. I mean, Washington jumped on them. You saw the coaching staff here on both sides, the adjustments, the game plans. It was awesome. This was high level football from the Pac-12.
Yeah,
It
but
was
then
awesome.
like they went up 24-20, and then you know what Washington does? The next two drives, score touchdowns.
Boom,
That was an
boom.
unbelievable response. And you know what? That happened in the first time that these teams played. Oregon, went down the field, and then all of a sudden, Washington had that dead spot in the third quarter, and then you know what? They came up and made big plays, especially on that final possession early in the season when Michael Penix went down. And they scored with the pass to Roma Dunze. Yeah, but this was an awesome game. Couldn't have asked for a much better game to end the Pac-12 on. Bo Nix, of course. People, this is exactly why, like, if you're a Heisman voter, right? So the voting comes out, if you don't know, listeners, that voting for the Heisman comes out like it came out last Sunday, right? We're recording this on Sunday. You guys will watch this on Monday. Voting came out for the voters. It's like 900 voters came out last Sunday, and then it closes, I believe, Saturday night or Sunday morning or Sunday night, whatever. If you voted before the conference championship games, that's unbelievable.
You should have
You
your
might,
vote taken away.
yeah, I think there's a very good argument to be had there. Now, Bo Nix actually played a pretty decent game, but it wasn't enough. And Michael Penix outplayed him, I thought.
Well, and here's what I'll say about that too. Like typically what makes Bo Nix so successful is he has time in the pocket, right? They run the ball well, and he has space, right? The linebackers creep up, whatever it is. Like Will Stein does a great job of getting space. So run after catch helps him. He's so accurate when he's in rhythm and he's throwing to receivers that they can catch the ball. And those great athletes, Johnson and Franklin, can get the ball and run, right? They did not run the ball well. They ran the ball fine, but they did not run the ball a lot, right? They only had 14 rushing attempts with running backs. They had 34, passing attempts. Like that's not the ratio that Oregon wants. I talked about in the preview. Like Bucky Irving is your best player offensively. That was my opinion. I think he's the best player on the team, and he did not get featured. He had 20 yards, right? And yeah, he had 5 touches and threw catching the ball. But like you have to like we saw Dylan Johnson. They found really creative ways to get him the ball. Ryan Grubb and running the ball and doing schemes and all this other stuff. To open lanes for them. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I do want to say about the game as a whole and like the 2 seasons for Washington and Oregon. One thing I didn't count because I picked Oregon this game. I thought they were going to cover. I thought they were actually going to blow them out. I thought there was a significant
We
talent
both
gap
took
here.
them, right? That was my only miss. ATS this week. I won 9-1. This is my only miss.
Yeah, and like I feel like a lot of people were on Oregon as well, just expecting them to win. May not cover, but win for sure. This team of Washington is a ton of seniors, a ton of seniors, and this was a different football team in September, and now in the late November, right, early December, and Jalen McMillan is healthy, right? Like, and we saw that they exposed Oregon's safeties or slot corners, whatever it was. They found matchups for them, and like most teams, right, maybe outside of Georgia the past few years, like you can't go 3 deep in your secondary. We can lock down elite wide receivers. We even saw that like Georgia's all-time great secondary last year, a great front seven, and just like defense in general. Like Ohio State exposed them because they had they could line up with 3 wide receivers and like create mismatches, and that's what this team does. Washington, McMillan, Odunze, and Polk, like they did a heck of a job finding space for him. Michael Penix does what he does best, where he surveys the field, picks a matchup pre-snap, and then hits him on time and on target. I also want to say about Oregon's season in general, like they did not play many close games. Washington, on the other hand, played a lot of them, right? And like
Yeah.
that experience is invaluable. Not only do you have that senior edge where you're like, I'm not going home. I came back. I could have gone to the NFL, but I'm coming back to win a Pac-12 title and go to the playoffs, like Oregon blew out everybody except Washington. And they played two close games against Washington and they lost both of them. I think that's really, really like valuable. We're like Dan Lanning himself and his team has to learn how to win close games and grind it out for 4 quarters. Like that. And that's like you saw them like get jumped on and then like you saw in these fourth quarters in these games against Washington, like Washington just made plays down the stretch and Oregon did not.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And, credit Kalen DeBoer, dude. That dude has lost, what, 2 games ever as a coach of Washington?
Washington.
It's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. He inherited a ball club that was, what, sub 500? Right around
Yeah, Jimmy
500?
Lake.
Yeah, the
Goddamn,
old
Jimmy
the
Lake.
Jimmy Lake era, and I mean, look, unbelievable job he's done, and Ryan Grubb scheming up stuff like that, and defensively, I was more impressed defensively in the first half. Of course, Oregon made adjustments. Credit to Will Stein and Bo Nix, who played very, very well in the second half. Even at the end of the second quarter, they were able to make adjustments pretty early, but like, man, like, credit that first half Washington defense getting it done, allowing that offense some breathing room, and then honestly, the second that Oregon scored that touchdown, right, to make it 24-20, Washington goes down and makes a score. What does the Washington defense do? They get a stop when they needed it. They get a stop when they needed it. Just like on that fourth down earlier in the season, they got the stop when they needed it, and then they went down and scored again. So, I this Washington defense, it's not my favorite defense to watch. It's not my favorite defense. Like, I don't drool over this defense, but holy cow, do they get it done when they need to get it done.
There's something to be said about that. You also, I want to take you to the early third quarter, right? Oregon comes out of halftime at scoring a touchdown, right? Doing exactly what they need to do, where they won that middle eight. We talk about a lot of times. The last 4 minutes of the second quarter and the first 4 minutes of that third quarter. And they came out and they scored a touchdown right after half. And then Michael Penix, makes a bad pass. Kyrie Jackson picks it off. 2 plays later, bam. Washington, the guy makes a heck of a play. Bo Nix, I don't know if you saw him or not, whatever it was down the sideline. They get a stop there. And like that was so big. And it ended up not mattering because Michael Penix turned the ball over on fourth downs like the next play. But like that drive they had. But like regardless, like again, respond, response, response. That's just a sign of good coaching, good leadership, good culture there. That's just hard to predict and like put a metric on or to put like into Vegas rankings. Like it's just like, yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll talk more about college football playoffs after we recap the rest of these games. But Washington punches their ticket in the number 2 spot. Do you think they had an argument for one?
Yeah, absolutely. You texted me this morning asking for my rankings, my prediction. We put them out on Twitter or whatnot.
Not necessarily your rankings, your predictions, right? Let's
We're
be
predicted,
fair. Let's be
and so
clear. I think our
I
predictions are a little bit different than necessarily what our actual rankings would be.
yes, and I put Michigan at 1 because I thought that's what they was going to do. But I think there's a real legit case for Washington to be 1. I think resume wise, like I I think like I get it. They struggled in late November, but like so did Michigan, right? And like
Yeah.
this is a way more impressive win than whatever the heck happened
And
in Indianapolis.
I already know what the comments are thinking. Well, Michigan would be a touchdown favorite over Washington. Sure. Sure.
Awesome.
I don't awesome. That good for them. Sure. I mean, we're just strictly talking resumes right now. That's all we're talking about.
Yeah, and yeah, I think and Washington would have been nice to be able to pick where they could play, right? Now, obviously, both Michigan and Washington kind of do get a tough draw with the Texas and Alabama, 2 teams that are just red hot right now. Um, but yeah, they would love to play in the Rose Bowl and stay on the Pac-12. Like think about how packed that stadium would have been, that West Coast Rose Bowl, the ending of the Pac-12 era, and having to play, Bama having to travel all the way out to California. And instead, they go down into the South, into Louisiana, and have to play on turf against Texas.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that line opened up at 4.5. Sure, someone in the comments will correct me if I'm wrong in that, but yeah, I mean, look, good luck to Washington. Good luck to Oregon, who I guess they won't be playing in the Rose Bowl because Rose Bowl is a playoff game this year. Uh, I don't know. I didn't check what
They're playing
bowl they're
Liberty.
playing.
They're playing Liberty. They're playing Liberty. I believe it's the Cotton Bowl this year. They're playing Liberty, which
Wow.
is a pretty awesome
It's a good
draw.
opportunity for Liberty, but we'll,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see.
if you're Oregon, I don't know if you're pissed off or what, but Bo Nix already said he's playing, which is awesome. There's going to be a lot of points scored on Oregon side, and we'll see if Liberty can match it. But we'll talk about them later as well. They did a great job um, this weekend with their game, with their win. I'm
I
sorry, it's the
agree.
Fiesta Bowl. So it'll be on the West Coast, which is good for Oregon.
Let's go to the Big 12 championship. Let's go to Texas versus Oklahoma State, where the line was 15.5, and that was not enough. We were both on Texas minus 15.5. And look, you're looking at the guy preseason Oklahoma State better to win the Big 12. But you're also looking at a guy that gigantically hedged Texas, right, to win that thing. So uh, it ended up working out for me, I guess. But yeah, and the reason why we were on Texas in this game is exactly the reason why they ended up winning and covering the way that they did. Ollie Gordon got shut down by that unbelievable defensive line. And guess what? Alan Bowman, like, as he made some seriously boneheaded plays, right? But there were also times when he elevated and he made the throws and he put up points on the board. Sure, some of that was thanks to a nice little interception that Quinn Ewers threw to a ghost. But yeah, Texas dominated here. They look really good. They were clearly one of the top 4 teams in the country, I believe. The resume checks out. The eye test checks out. Now you could look, the TCU game, they dominated. They controlled that game. All right, TCU game. TCU came back, sure, put up points, made it quote unquote scary, right? I mean, Texas was in complete control of that game. The Kansas State game was really close, of course, but I mean, Kansas State's a really good ball club. I mean, look, all these, every single one of these teams in the top 4 has played a close game this year. Has played a close game this year. You know, that's not always the case, but
It's
every
what happens
single
when you
one of
play
these
in a
teams,
conference. Like you're gonna get got. Like you're gonna get every team's best shot, and like
yes.
there's enough talent in all the
Oh,
Power Five
and
conferences and coaching to like.
if you don't think Texas on the way out, right, was not going to have a gigantic target on their back, I mean, you knew instantly why what was going to happen in some of these games where Texas is getting these teams' best shots, right? But yeah, this was domination. This does not take away from what Mike Gundy did this year. Now he won Big 12 Coach of the Year. I don't agree with that, right? But here's the thing: I believe it is voted on coaches, right? The coaches vote on Big 12 Coach of the Year. Am I right on that? I don't know if someone
I'm
can
not
fact
sure.
check me in the comments. But if if you're a coach in the Big 12, are you voting for Steve Sarkisian, who's leaving the Big 12 next year? No, I don't think I am. Or any media, like, no. So I think like that award probably should have gone to Steve Sarkisian, but Mike Gundy still like deserves to have his name in that conversation for sure. And we talk about how good of a coach he is. And when his back is against the wall, that is when he's at his best, right? I mean, he went on a tear this year where he won 3 straight games, 3 straight times as an underdog. And in 2 of those games, he was over a touchdown underdog to those teams. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. After not knowing his quarterback situation early in the year, having transfer portal exodus in the offseason last year, just finding a way, man. Just finding a way. So credit to Mike Gundy and everything that he did this year. Um, I am a Texas A&M fan, so I will be excited to play against Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl in Houston. So um, can't wait to see how that goes. Texas, on the other hand, will be in the college football playoffs. They'll be playing in, I believe, New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. And that'll be an exciting game. We just talked about Washington. They're 4.5 point favorites. Texas is over Washington. It's gonna be Washington is a tough matchup for Texas, and Texas I think is a tough matchup for Washington. Like offensively, like those 2 teams are tough matchups for the opposing defenses.
Absolutely. Is it okay to call Texas back yet? Are we doing that?
Uh,
No. What makes them back?
well,
To
like
me, this is because this is a different Texas team than we've seen in prior years.
yeah, like I think like Texas is back in the sense where they're recruiting at that high level, but also the production is on the field, and they have that coach. You know, like it'll be interesting. Like it always has ultimately come down to like having a quarterback, right? And Quinn Ewers seems like he's a very good quarterback, and he's been able to do a lot with the talent they've have around him. So we will see, like, if these quarterbacks that Texas can bring in, right, or and have brought in, aka Malik Murphy, Arch Manning, if those guys can be those guys to continue to carrying the torch, right? Because it felt like there was a stretch there, even with Sam Ellinger, like for how productive Sam Ellinger was, he had his flaws, right? He wasn't going to like necessarily elevate a team to win a game. The difference, though, I think with this team, the biggest difference besides quarterback, right? Defense, man, defense. And now they don't
That D
have it necessarily in
line.
the secondary, but yeah, that front seven is nasty. But some of those guys are going to go to the NFL, so we'll see how they reload. Texas is back, I believe, when they can reload. So we'll see how they do that next year. And if they lose this game to Washington, that's not a disappointing season at all. They won the Big 12 on their way out. They're headed to the SEC with a top recruiting class, very talented team, and they're getting their bag. So successful season for both of these teams. So this was not necessarily the most entertaining game to watch. A lot of points on the board in the first half, though. So if you like offense, you did enjoy watching that first half for sure.
Well, and Sark's offense is always beautiful as it is. Like with those talents and the receivers they have, running backs, they go 3 deep there, 4 deep. Um, yeah, it's really incredible to watch. To me, when I thought like I took Texas to win the Big 12. I took their over or whatever. I was really high in Texas this year. I believe in defense, yes, but that offense I think can elevate you to like something that you haven't had before. I think we're like they can go and actually compete at a national championship level. And like you saw that against going into Bama and kind of whooping them, right? And that's the SEC champ. Obviously, from September to December, we saw Nick Saban and Alabama grow a significant amount. But you saw Texas grow too. Like they went through, trials and tribulations you mentioned in the Big 12, getting everybody's best shot, and they went unbelievable. They lost to Oklahoma, but they battled, and when they needed it, the last 2 weeks, everyone counted them out. They put them at 7. They're like, they don't look good. They're having all these close games. They whooped Texas Tech and they whooped Oklahoma State. And part of the reason why I was on Texas to cover that spread right in our preview is because they needed style points. And I thought like this is the team to be able to get it right with Quinn Ewers. I mean, they threw the ball 46 times and they were throwing the ball in the fourth quarter because they knew like they needed to put a statement right on
Yeah,
their resume.
Quinn
And
Ewers had
this
like
is
350 yards in the first half. I don't know if that's a Big 12 record. I didn't see it on the broadcast. I just that has to be close. I mean that Big 12 championship record. I'm saying I don't know that was impressive. Very impressive first half for Quinn Ewers. Uh, but yeah, I mean, not really much else to say other than I'm excited to see these teams in the future in their respective conferences. I think Oklahoma State can be a big time player in the Big 12 for years to come. And I think Texas is going to have an immediate impact in the SEC. So uh, I guess good luck to both these teams. Let's go to the SEC. Let's talk about Alabama versus Georgia. The line was 5.5 when we were picking. I believe it dropped down to 4.5. It opened at 6.5. So people were continually betting Bama, apparently for the right reason. Bama gets it done 27-24. I'm not going to say Alabama played the best game either, but they played a very, very good game on defense, and they got enough done on offense to get it done.
Yeah, this
So,
team just like we talked about it with Washington and that defense getting stops when they needed it, and that team in general. Like this is a Bama team that just like in the second half, and especially honestly in that first half, I thought when Georgia just cut through them right like a hot knife and butter, boom, went down touchdown, and then Bama went 3 and out. They responded so well, right? We're stopping Georgia, and then giving their offense a chance to just hang in the game. And once Milroe got settled in, they figured out, oh, like Georgia's running this weird like 2-man spy group, whatever it is, like, and try to figure out how to do that. And credit to Bama's coaching staff, right? Tommy Reese and Kevin Steele. We talked about this in our preview where like this is a really well coached Bama team, right? And like Georgia's got great coaches in general. Like, right, they're obviously loaded there, but like the coordinator improvement, right, from last year to this year, I thought was just massive and couldn't. This is a perfect game, and the whole season is a very, laid off for you where they struggled early and they just continue to get better and better and better. And to me, that's a sign of good coaching and good culture. And obviously, those two things that Bama historically has had, right, in their best years of the dynasty. But it sounds like they got those two things right again, which is really dangerous to see with a team that talented to be able to go out and do that.
yeah. I'll play a little devil's advocate, though. There were a couple of things that needed to go right for Alabama that went right. You look at uh, turnovers in key situations. That Carson Beck, the reverse, that looked like it had some room there.
Yeah.
The missed transfer on the handoff, Alabama jumps in that, and now they only got a field goal out of it. But I mean, Alabama won by a field goal, right? And also Georgia. I mean, look, who knows if they would have been moving the ball. Also, that Isaiah Bond catch that on that fourth
Yeah.
down probably should have been reviewed. If we're being serious, probably should have been
Yeah.
reviewed. I think it was not a catch, but overall, still Bama gets it done. And look, we'll talk more about the college football playoffs. But if you are talking about someone who deserves based on their resume, right? If you were to just not see the other teams, right, and you were to just look at a blind resume of the teams that this team beat, and even the loss to Texas, right? But if you knew that Texas was in the college football playoffs as well and won their respective conference and only had one loss, you'd say that that's a playoff caliber team, wouldn't you not? Would you not? I mean,
Yeah. Yes. And yes, absolutely.
no, that doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, we'll have time to talk about that later. But Georgia pulls Florida State in the Rose or the Orange Bowl. That'll be an interesting game. Florida State's gonna be pissed off at the SEC. Georgia's gonna be pissed off that they didn't make it to the playoffs either. Those are two angry teams playing in the Sunshine State there. And Bama's playing Michigan round one. Probably not the team that Michigan wanted to see round one, based on
You
the
saw that.
reactions of their watch party.
Come on.
But I mean, look,
Can I say something
I
about
mean,
that? Like, first of all, you got to know that ESPN has cameras in there. Like, everyone has a camera on your watch party. You have to know. Like, there should be an written rule, or just like someone telling you in the locker room, like whoever it is, you have to like do the golf clap of Nick Saban, Alabama, or be like hype about it. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You cannot be, oh shit, here we go. We missed out on Florida State. Like, to me, right? And we'll talk about the playoffs anyways, but real quick, like this is why like everyone's frustrated about Florida State. Well, not everyone. A lot of people are frustrated by Florida State. Thing is like you ask the players who they want to play. Do you think Michigan wants to play Alabama or Florida State? And like to me, like that's where like the argument ends. Like, okay, who's actually better? Like, yeah, like the players and coaches, like they know more than the media and these voters and whatever else. But yeah. Anyway, so you
but
can
not more than
continue.
us though. We know things. We know
Well,
things here
yes,
on this
and
podcast.
obviously the Redshirt Sophomore is a little bit different, but
Yeah, we know everything about everything, right? Always. So make sure if you guys are listening, make sure you like the video because we know everything, right? I mean, subscribe because we know everything. Follow us on Twitter at the Redshirt Soft because we know everything. We just know things here. But
I do
I
want to say about
mean,
the game though. You mentioned earlier about or you mentioned in our preview like Carson Beck was going to be under fire like he had not been before, and it was going to affect his play. And I thought that was pretty obvious. He only missed 8 throws. He got sacked a couple times, right? And Marius Mims going out early was brutal because you have two edge rushers on both sides
and
that are
Lad McConkey was clearly not healthy at all.
oh yeah, and
Like
Brock
like this
Bowers.
Florida State team, that's gonna get Georgia, they're gonna get a fully healthy Lad McConkey and they're gonna get a fully healthy Brock Bowers.
Assuming no opt outs, we'll see what happens there. The thing is about the
Well,
bowl
Brock
games
Bowers might, yeah.
is like
I
the
don't
thing
think
is,
Lad
well, I don't know.
McConkey opts out.
Yeah, the thing is about bowl games is like you can be upset and you can respond one or two ways. Like to me, Florida State's going to take that anger and use it as a motivation. Be like, okay, we got to go embarrass this SEC team and prove that we were actually deserving. Or George's like, we missed out. Like, what's the point of playing? So that's the whole debate. Is like, to be honest, I think like, and as an unbiased, right, I'm a Big Ten guy. Like, I don't have any pull either way, but I'm a college football fan. And like, I think if you want like the sanctity of our sport to continue, right, in terms of lack of movement, like you saw at UCF, like when they won and they claimed that championship, like Auburn, if Auburn had beaten them and handled them, like none of that would have happened. And Georgia can come in and take care of business, right, against Oregon, or I'm sorry, in the Orange Bowl. Obviously, like that'll kind of put the Florida State, defenders, a little bit, a quieter place. But yeah, how do you think that Bama, like does this obviously like they struggled against Auburn, right? And then how different was this week versus a week ago? And like, because you picked Bama to win, like was this how you thought it was going to
I
play
picked
out,
I picked him to
or
cover. I tried to
Oh
middle
yeah,
it
I'm
there.
sorry.
I did
Yeah.
take Georgia to win, but I knew it was gonna be a close game. I just thought 5.5 was too much. Uh, Matchup one. Well, we talked about it in the preview, right? Like Carson Beck, right? They had not seen a defense like this Alabama defense. And the other argument was Jalen Monroe had not seen a secondary like this secondary. And that ended up like kind of proving true to some degree. Now Jim Monroe had 2 touchdown passes, 193 yards, but they kept him in check a lot of times on the ground. When they weren't designed runs, right? Like talking about just keeping them, they kept him in the pocket. They had 2 spies almost on him, like every play. Uh, Shout out Roydell Williams for getting done. They executed when they needed to, and that was just key. And then of course turnovers. I mean, just making less mistakes was kind of what it came down to. And it seems like they were ready for it. They had made those mistakes, and they had paid for those mistakes earlier with the loss to Texas, and Georgia had not yet paid for mistakes such as that. So, I mean, I was on Bama just because I thought these were 2 really good teams. I just thought 5.5 was too many points, but I thought Georgia would still probably win the game. And look, if these teams were to play again, Georgia would still be favored. All right, that shouldn't be news to people, right? People might think that's crazy that I'm saying that, but like Georgia will be favored. They're still probably power rated as the number 1 team in the country. If you ask a lot of people, I think it might be close. It could be a pick 'em, right? It could be Georgia -1, -2.5. It'll be really close, but like Georgia is still right there as probably the number 1, number 2 power rated team in the entire country.
Yeah, I do want to say this about Bama, especially that run game. We saw Jason McClellan didn't play. Obviously, he got hurt in that Auburn game. I believe it hurt his foot. And I love Jason McClellan. He's a leading rusher, starting running back. I think he's a really smooth runner. I think he's got a bright future in the NFL. But to be honest, this matchup particularly, you mentioned that you love the way Roydell Williams runs the ball. I do too. He's a really, really physical back, downhill runner, gets you extra yards. And a team like Georgia, every yard matters. And you can't be dancing in the holes, looking for creases, like because it's not going to be there. They're so well sound defensively, even with a banged up and a young linebacker core. They're just so well coached and disciplined there. Him and Jam Miller, who I love, Jam Miller. I think he's just a really, really good athlete, right? On in the running game and the passing game, we saw the wheel route, and even on special teams, he's so fun to watch just flying down the field. But I thought like that was not work to their benefit, but like those guys are really good to have in your back pocket there without your starting running back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Wardell Williams is that starting running back. If I mean, like I get that Jason McClellan is hurt, but dude, I think Roydell Williams is better. I think he's so good. I'm a big fan of
Yeah,
his, but yeah, this was an awesome game. Of course, I mean we knew it was going to be uh, probably the probably the 2 best, maybe 2 of the 3 best teams in the entire country in terms of power ratings. It was awesome. It was an awesome game. So can't wait to see Bama in the college football playoffs, and we'll see what Georgia does. Uh, I guess in this bowl game, pending opt outs, and look, we know that their recruiting class is pretty ridiculous right now. So I expect them to be players. I mean, this is gonna sound stupid, but obviously they're players in in the future, in the next 10 years. Like this Georgia program is a program.
they're not good. They lost their first game in like 30 games, and they're not going to
Yeah,
three-peat. Oh no, like no, Georgia's going to be fine. You mentioned the recruiting. To me, I thought was interesting was how about the former Georgia transfers? Right, make some plays. Burton had the touchdown. Tresman Marshall had the fumble recovery.
yeah,
That was kind of cool to see. I'm sure those guys were fired up about that game. But yeah, you mentioned Georgia will be just fine. It'll be interesting to see what Carson Beck does, right, with his NFL decision. And obviously some other players there will have some key decisions to make. But regardless, they'll reload. They'll be okay.
yeah. One loss I think is pretty big though is Fran Brown going to Syracuse, taking that head coaching job there as
Oh,
well.
he elite
So
recruiter, elite developer there at D back.
yeah, so we'll see what Georgia has to replace there and how that secondary gets hit in the future. But I'm sure they'll be fine.
Well, yeah, and I was like like Nick Saban had to deal with it. At least Kirby got to see how he handled it. But like you see Dan Lanning going out and doing this thing in Oregon. Like you're like there's gonna be attrition to his staff, right? And like you saw the offensive coordinators obviously in the NFL now. We'll see how they can handle. I believe in Kirby Smart. I believe in that program and the culture there is really, really sound that they will just plug and chug. But it's something to monitor for sure.
Absolutely. Let's talk HC. Let's talk Florida State. Let's talk Louisville. Let's talk the game. Uh, this was Brock Glenn. He might be a good quarterback in a couple of years. He was not ready for this moment, right? First start as a true freshman. It's in the ACC championship game. But look, that defense just got done, man. I mean, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, some dudes, and also Jack Plummer. I mean, look, Jack Plummer. We talked about it, right? I've talked about this explicitly. I know you share some agreement in this, but like Jack Plummer is just he's the most average quarterback you could possibly think of. And the problem is when you play an elite defense and you're an average quarterback, you look like a below average quarterback. That's what he was
He's
today.
about he's about as college quarterback gets.
Yeah.
Right. He's been there for 5, 6 years. He's on his third team now. He knows every offense. He's seen every defense, and yet still continues to make mistakes, continues to do the same thing over and over again. The
In
thing is like
just brutal situations.
the thing is
Brutal.
to be honest, I credit Jeff Brom here. I don't obviously the it didn't turn out like he wanted to, but like to go 10-2 and like you fooled me. Like yes, Jack Plummer had a bad game. I'm not gonna like trash the guy and his whole career for one bad game in the biggest game of his career. Whatever. Like you played a team better than you, a defense that's really good and playing around, and like you lost. Like you didn't play well, fine. But like they found like really creative ways. And I should have known. I picked Louisville, but I didn't like pick up on all year that like they didn't hide Jack Plummer, right? But like they played into their strengths, which was their defense and their running game. And like to me, I assumed with Jeff Brom they were gonna throw the ball over the yard and like Plummer and Thrash and Coleman, all these guys were gonna go off all year. And while like Thrash put up good numbers and Jack Plummer was good at times, like this was about running game and defense. And to be honest, like Florida State without without Jordan Travis, without under their third string quarterback, like they were the same thing when they had to run the ball and play good defense. And like they're just more talented than you. And like they play discipline, right? They capitalize on your turnovers and whatnot. And like they made some big plays. At times they responded well. Like Toa Feely had that big run after you went down and kicked a field goal to tie it.
He
And
was
then
the
right away,
MVP.
boom.
It's pretty wild. I mean, like if you had asked me going into this, I would have said, well, Florida State wins probably Trey Benson or defensive player. But
Deion Coleman.
Toafili, I mean, have a day. Have a day, kid.
Yeah, yeah. It was a tough. It was it was. I thought it was good football, like defensively and like really entertaining. Like it was actually a close game. The thing is, like in these games, and like as a Big Ten West fan, like I understand this. Like when it like was up to like what was it at 3 or it was at 10, right? It was at 10, and it was back down to 1 or whatever it was. Like those leads like just feel so big, even though it's literally one score. It just feels so big that like so much has to go right for you to get back in the game. And Louisville just had chance after chance after chance after chance to tie the game, take the lead, right? They had that turnover and then they had the short field and then boom.
Yeah, like the blocked
Yeah,
punt. Well,
it's
they
tough.
just tackled the punter because the punter they got after him. Whatever that shift, I don't know what that special teams coordinator was doing for Florida State. Odd
Yeah.
shift. Louisville said, "Bet we're coming after it," and they got them. And then of course Jack Plummer, after an unbelievable play by the way by that cornerback to rip that ball out on that corner route, uh, or sorry on that fade route. Thought he might have had a pick right there. Wasn't out of bounds. But the ball does not lie and finds him again on like the next play. So, but that was also just Jack Plummer straight to the numbers in between 1 and 5. Just pretty brutal.
Can't do
And
that.
look, and we'll talk more college football playoffs later. But Florida State, of course, getting left out after this game. College football playoff committee obviously saw that and we're like, all right, we don't want to watch Michigan, Iowa again.
Oh my God. Chill. Too
No,
soon,
no,
man.
no, no, no. Here's the thing. I don't agree with that sentiment necessarily because I think Tate Rodemaker is a fine quarterback. I
Mm-hmm.
think if he did
Mm-hmm.
not get hurt, I think if he played this game, I think they look better. I think they're actually in the playoffs. Two quarterback injuries leaves Florida State left out. going to the Rose Bowl, or sorry, not the Rose Bowl, the Orange Bowl down there in Sunshine State, where they're familiar with that stadium that they'll be playing in. Just what's the vibe of Florida State right now? Like, I mean, we talked it a little bit when we talked about Georgia, but I mean, what are these practices going to look like? What is this? What are these recruits thinking? What is this? I don't know. Like, what's the vibe around this program right now?
You have to be frustrated and pissed off. Now, like I think the crazy part is you went 13-0. Like this was a wildly successful year. Like I get it. Like there were high expectations coming into the year, but nobody really gave him a chance to be a national championship contender. Right. We saw playoffs. Like if things broke right, if they beat LSU, if they had some certain other conferences lose or down years by their conference champions, then maybe they can sneak in. The thing is you ran a table and you believe you beat two SEC teams, right? As well. And in your out of conference slate, you have to be frustrated. And obviously, like you hate to see it happen because of an injury. Like that, like let's be blunt here. Like if Jordan Travis is playing this game, they beat Florida by a substantially more amount, and they obviously handle Louisville as well. And they're sitting here and they're probably playing, Washington in the Sugar Bowl or whatever it would have to be. It sucks. It really, really sucks. And the thing is like, yeah, what do you do going forward? To me, I hope it settles, and I hope like they figure like they just go like, okay, like it's not our year or whatever. Like we probably weren't gonna win it all. Like the thing is, I heard a thing about talking about like this is that next push, or maybe that push over the ledge to leaving the ACC, which they've wanted to do for a while. Fans, coaches, and
Yeah,
that to me scares me. That's why I was frustrated. Where I was like, for the good of college football, the future of college football, right, in the sanctity of our conferences, just put Florida State in. Like the SEC will be fine. Bama will recover. Georgia won't be too bad. Like Ohio State's not in it, fine. Like Florida State and the ACC needed this, and the ACC more specifically needed this. And yeah, it's really really brutal. And the thing is, like, what if it was like, what if Clemson was like good this year? Like again, like again, like you're never rooting for Clemson if you're a Florida State fan, but at the same time, like you're pretty bummed out that they went 8-4, even though like it was probably about as impressive at 8-4 as you could have, or like maybe it's one of the better 8-4 teams in the country. But yeah, you have to be upset and like deservingly so. Like someone's gonna be left out. Like we talked about, like having a 5-team playoff, a 4-team playoff with 5 power conferences just was bound to happen. I'm surprised this didn't happen earlier. A lot of times we were arguing 4 versus 5, and none of those teams deserve to actually be in. This year, you had 5 legit candidates. Someone's going to be upset. The fans, the money, whatever, that'll come back. They'll be fine. I feel bad for those players, right? That locker room video or that video of that meeting room, it's tough to watch. Tough to watch. You have to feel bad for these guys that put on their life on their line, come to Florida State to fulfill a dream, do everything that you thought do everything that we asked them to do to make the college football playoff, and then it just gets ripped from them because of an injury.
yeah. It stinks because this is probably the perfect year to have a 16 playoff. And look, I'm under the belief, right? I I don't love playoff expansion. It's not my favorite thing. I understand both sides because I understand the argument that doesn't like it because they're like, let's devalue those games, right? But then the playoff expansions are like, well, you devalue those games, but you also increase the value of these other games. I don't know. I think the 12 team playoff devalues conference championships as well as regular season games. I think a 16 playoff. I think 16 playoff is better than 14 playoff. If you are going to
It's not
expand, I
crazy.
think I think 6 is a really good number. You get all the power conferences in there, plus essentially an at large, I guess. And
Well,
then
it wouldn't even have to be like that way. It could just be like
no, yeah, but I'm saying in this specific
like
year, right?
hypothetically in this kind of year, yeah.
Yeah, in this kind of year, right? You have the 5 power conference champions, and then your 6 is Georgia, and then like honestly, all the 6 of those teams I think deserve to get in and are also really really good teams. And sure, you leave out Ohio State and Oregon, but in a year, but that's just one of those years. You had a lot of good teams at the top and a lot of good resumes. So I like the 6 personally because of the number of conferences that are quote unquote power conferences in our sport. Now going forward, ironically, because the Pac-12 doesn't exist, It almost feels like a 14 playoff.
Yeah,
It's fine. Of course,
God damn it, man.
the year when we don't have the 14 playoff is the year we're moving out of it, or the year that we don't have 5 power conferences, we have 4. Is the year we're moving out of the 14 playoff, which I think is quite ironic. But I don't know if you're in the comments, you're listening to this video, you probably want to hear more about this game. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on playoff expansion. I like hearing other people's like the fan perspectives. I think the perspective that is most important, aside from the players, right? That is the perspective I think is the most important aside from the players, right? Uh, but these media companies, apparently their
That's
opinion
who makes
matters
the
the
decision.
most. Their opinion matters the most. So I don't know, man. Let's go to the Big Ten. Let's talk Michigan. Let's talk Iowa. Michigan minus 21.5. We picked it at 22. Yeah, we nailed it. I mean, look, some referees bailed out Michigan in terms of covering. But again, we said this. Iowa had no chance of winning this football game. They had no chance. And you know what? That's
What do you
why.
mean that bad referee call that screwed Iowa from
Oh
winning the
yeah, that would
game,
have
right?
changed the game. And like I'm tweeting this during the game. Like once Michigan put up 20 points, like Iowa has scored more than 20 points like 3 times this entire year, right? So good
And
luck.
like once in Big Ten play, twice,
Yeah, and
twice.
this is the best defense that they played against all year. Good luck. So yeah, this was not even close. And JJ McCarthy didn't look that. I will say that Iowa defense looked awesome. Like they played their absolute nuts off. Like they had
Yeah,
nuts this game. Like that secondary, man, even without Cooper DeJean, what is it about? What is it about Parker, dude? What is it about Phil Parker and his defense is just being so dang elite all the time? With
they're
doesn't
just
matter who's back there.
they're just so unbelievably disciplined, and that like they force you to do exactly what they want you to do. And the thing is, if you don't have the caliber of athlete to really expose that, and I think Michigan is as talented as they've ever been. But if you want to talk about dynamic players on the edge, I don't think they have that. And like when Iowa plays its A game defensively, like you saw Michigan's scoring drives, touchdown drives were 2 short fields. Like, yeah, like that's kind of this was really impressive. You mentioned it, Phil Parker. Like he deserves a lot of credit. Now, whether Kirk Ferentz stays or not, or he walks out into the sunlight or sunset, like Phil Parker's going to deserve a shot to be that head coach or to be, a big time defense coordinator somewhere or a head coach somewhere. Like he has done a tremendous job year over year, maximizing talent, recruiting, developing, putting players into perfect schemes and techniques and whatnot.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. But credit Jim Harbaugh's Michigan team, come back, winning the Big 12 or winning the Big 10, making the college football playoffs for the third straight year, winning the Big 10 for the third straight year, having an undefeated regular season for the third straight year. And look, they unfortunately they pull Alabama, which uh, is yes the worst team that they could have possibly pulled. And their player reaction demonstrated that, as we've already mentioned when we talked about Alabama. Uh,
They're they're
we'll, we'll
they're probably going to close as um underdogs.
underdogs.
Which
I
when
think
was
they
the last
will
time
too.
we saw the number one team? Have we ever had that in that first semifinal game? I bet that normal
Uh,
spread's probably over a touchdown. With a lot of these matchups that have been the 1 versus 4 team.
yeah, I would think so. Yeah. Um, even when Bama played Ohio State in like 2014, the first college football playoff, when Ohio State actually won, I think that was a pretty decent spread, if I remember it correctly. But
Yeah, because how do you power rate Cardell Jones?
yeah, exactly. I think that was the confusion there. But yeah, Michigan, Nugent going down. I don't know his status necessarily going forward. Uh, we'll see about that. Of course,
Yeah, a
Zinter goes
month to get
down.
healthy.
A month to get out. Zinter goes down. Don't think Zinter will be playing necessarily, but I mean, it's 2 offensive linemen. Say you don't have those guys. Does Michigan still have the depth to compete with this Alabama front seven? I
Yeah.
think they
Oh,
do.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, they theoretically they do. We'll see if it actually happens. I do think like either Texas or Bama would have been a tough draw in terms of that front seven for both those teams. It's pretty damn good. But Michigan has recruited well and developed well on both sides of the ball. on the
Yeah,
interior.
keyword developed. They develop
Yeah,
men.
they do. About the game, though, I thought it was interesting. Like, I guess Iowa knew they had to throw the ball, but like as soon as Michigan, I was hoping them like to try some stuff to maybe get a quick score early. Just come out of the gates, just
A single trick
unleash
play.
the bat. Yeah, like Brian Ferentz in your last game ever as an Iowa offensive coordinator, you're telling me you couldn't have come up with something like crazy. Like I feel like you could have done something crazy. And like I don't know. The thing is, like in this game, as soon as you go down 10-0, like that feels insurmountable because that's not Michigan's last score, and that means you have to get two scores, to even come close to that. And one of them has to be in the end zone. It's tough though. And if the problem is like this Iowa team is just so banged up, right? Like I don't think it would have mattered. Cade McNamara in the revenge game, I don't think would have mattered. Right. The only
Right.
person that like if you got both tight ends back, you got the corner back, and maybe it makes a play on special teams. Who knows? But yeah, this was never going to be an Iowa win it regardless. So it's a shame though. The Big Ten West stays winless, right, in the conference championship game
In
since
its
they
entire history. In its entire
brutal.
history.
They won one game this year against a ranked team, and that was Minnesota beating Iowa. It was
Yeah.
West on
Dude,
West crime there.
it's like crazy though, because like in the ACC when the two divisions existed, right? You didn't hear a lot about like, oh, the ACC Coastal Champion, right? Like that wasn't like the thing. Like the Big Ten West champion was like the thing because like that's what they had to play for, like
Yeah,
that was the goal. Like in everyone's team meetings before the season, it was like, what is the goal, right? It was like it's probably winning the Big Ten West. So that is what
which
made that is what made that division really fun though, right? It's like you always had like some people like in week 13 were pulling out the rule books. Every year was like, okay, what kind of tiebreaker is going to get my team the Big Ten West title? Because like
yeah,
you
because it
knew
was always
that's
a 14 race.
there's always like a 4 or 5 team race, which is so awesome. So I'll miss the Big Ten West for that reason. But look, Big Ten West football isn't eliminated because these teams still exist and they're still in the Midwest and they still will be playing each other to some degree. So
Especially in October, November when it's cold. It was just funny that those 7 teams would just try to out Iowa each other, and like you
they
can't do
can't
that.
do
You
it.
you should
Can't
know
do
better
it.
than to do that. But yeah, regardless, we called this game. We said take Michigan spread, do not take the over. Right? Like
Yeah.
we talked about that. We're like instead of taking Michigan over 36 or 35, whatever it was like
35,
Michigan's gonna have
35
to
and a half.
cover that themselves. Like I was not gonna give them much help in terms of taking hitting the over right on the total there. So Michigan take the spread and you'll be pretty good there. But yeah,
Yep. It was a Dawson Diner play. It was awesome. But yeah, the Iowa
about
team total first half and second half and to full game all hit all those unders. So that
and the
was
game still hit under. Dude, they were crazy on unders this year. I think I'm trying to look at maybe the Michigan State game was their only under that hit or
the
only
over.
over that
Well, I
hit.
think Western Michigan over hit also because that score was like 41-10. Uh,
Yeah, there's no way
but
that line
yeah,
was above 50. I do think real quick, I do want to ask you about Michigan though, going forward. I know we'll talk about the playoff breakdowns. We'll get to all of that. But like this is
yeah,
another
Iowa's
game.
2-11 to the under or over. So 11-2 to the under.
That's what we call wagon. That's what we
Oh
call a
yeah.
wagon.
Oh yeah, they're right there with they were tied in first for UCLA unders and Tulane unders. So good work by those.
Does it worry you about
And
Michigan? Because
Ohio, the Ohio Bobcats 3-8-1 to the under, which by the way, I had the under in one of those 3 games where it lost. So pretty brutal. But anyways, continue what you were saying.
about Michigan, like this is another game where yeah, they threw the ball 30 times to McCarthy, but they didn't really push the ball down the field, right? Like, does this
Hey,
concern you? I get it. Like Iowa was trying to keep you underneath, and like that's who Iowa is, and it's another week of playing a really good defense, Ohio State and Iowa. But like, you're gonna have to play two really good defenses probably if you want to win a national championship game. Can JJ McCarthy? Does this worry you? Does this game? Does this outcome? Like, hey, like they don't trust McCarthy, or is it like our best chance of winning is taking care of the football,
it
and
actually
that's
it
what we're
does
gonna do.
worry me a little bit because you like now Iowa, of course, they're gonna Iowa. They have a really good secondary. They're disciplined, but like the secondaries that Michigan is going to be playing against, those DBs are more athletic than their receivers. They are. Well, specifically Bama. I'm not going to say Washington and Texas necessarily, but specifically that first round, you got to circle Alabama because those DBs are especially more athletic than their receivers are. And they've shown that all year. And you have to hit explosive plays if you're going to beat Bama. That's just what it is. You have to. Auburn hit a couple explosive plays that kept them in that game. Texas hit those explosive plays when they needed to win that game. And look, and the teams that didn't hit the explosive plays, the teams that even when teams that were up, even teams that were up on Bama, right, and they got conservative, Texas A&M, they didn't hit the explosive plays, and those were the margins. So if you need explosive plays, I'm not sure if Michigan's going to get it. You really got to hope that, I mean, Junior Colson and that linebacking core you need them. You need them to ball out, contain a guy known as Jalen Milroe in the box, which I thought Georgia did an okay job of. Just Michigan does a good job not really turning the ball over, which is key. Can't do that against Alabama, which I like for that matchup. But yeah, an early Dawson's Diner play a month in advance, I did take Bama plus 2.5. So if you follow us on Twitter at the Redshirt Soft, I did already take that. So the line's already moved to 1.5. I anticipate that crossing 0 by the time kickoff starts.
That's more of the value play. I think that's more why we decided to take it was
Yeah,
because
I think it's
that
just
line's not
value.
going to finish there. Yeah.
No, and look,
Just
but when that flips, when it's all said and done, is it possible that I'm on Michigan by the time that rolls around? Say Nugent's healthy. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Tulane SMU. I was all over it. SMU plus 3.5. SMU straight up. You were on Tulane. That's not to call you out at all, right? I just don't think people knew enough. But here's the thing. Rhett Lashley is such a good coach, dude. Dude, and like, oh, what he does with like, he was there with Nick Marshall in Auburn. He was there in Arkansas State when they had their master year when they won the Sun Belt. I mean, just what he has done with like some very, very, just I'll say athletic quarterbacks, right? So Preston Stone goes down, of course, if you didn't know in the Navy game. Everyone panics. This line flips from SMU. They would have been favored in this game, I think, if Preston Stone was playing this game. And switches because Kevin Jennings, we haven't seen him a lot. We're talking about a guy that's played very high level high school football, very athletic. And I like the way that they use him in the run game. Some early turnovers almost killed SMU. In fact, they lost the turnover margin, but it didn't matter. Michael Pratt just got, shut down.
Micah
He got
Hughes
shut
as
down.
well.
Micah Hughes. Yeah. Michael Pratt actually, he put like numbers up, but they couldn't put the ball in the end zone. 26-14 was the final score. And Tulane was at home too, man. Tulane was at home. It hurts, man. It hurts. And Tulane was probably the team that was going to get the New Year's Six bowl bid if they'd won this game. They do not. Neither does
Versus
SMU,
Liberty.
though, which is kind of a bummer because I thought SMU, you saw the SMU AD kind of have his plea. And I agree with it to some extent, right? You go and you challenge yourself by scheduling out of conferences with TCU, who was the defending national champion, who you ended up losing to in a pretty abysmal fashion. And TCU didn't end up being the best team out there. But and you lost to Oklahoma, who was end of the year as like probably a top 15 team. I didn't look at all the college football playoff rankings. Could be pulling on my butt. So if you know better comments, let me know where Oklahoma's at. But yeah, dude, Kevin Jennings, man, I was impressed with his athleticism and what he was able to do. Threw 2 picks. Oh well. Move on. That's what he did. And I like the way the SMU was able to move the ball. So there it is. SMU's last game in the American. They end up winning the conference champion. Breaks their 30-year plus streak of not winning national champ or not winning their own conference. They move to the ACC next year. Pretty good momentum for Rhett Lashley and the boys over there. And you know what? People like us, right, who are not necessarily old enough to watch SMU in the 80s and 90s. SMU can be a very, very good program, right? And now you move to a power conference, quote unquote, which may not be alive in the next
My
couple of
God.
years. Who knows? Uh, but the point is now you have a team that is a G5 team with P5 resources now joining a P5. That's a good recipe for SMU, I believe. And you have great geography being right there in Dallas.
I'll say this too, in terms of talent wise, not only like availability recruiting wise and like transfer portal like availability, which we've seen Rhett Lashlee hit home runs in the transfer portal, they're going to walk in the ACC and be an upper, in my opinion, a top half talented team, right? And like we saw these teams from the AAC go to the Big 12 and really struggle talent wise to compete for an 8 game season there. It's 9 games in Big 10, Big 12 now. Regardless what it is, like SMU is going to walk in and be as talented as at least half the conference, which is pretty darn good and impressive and a nice smooth transition you mentioned to topple onto this momentum they have building with this conference championship, and then hopefully they can add that onto a bowl win. They play Boston College up in Fenway, which is kind of brutal for Boston College. You could stay in Fenway, but SMU I like them to be a little bit more challenged, but I get the way the bowl the bowl tie-ins work out and whatnot, so it's a shame, but yeah.
Yeah. And then look, other news, of course, if you're watching this on Monday, we know this now as of Sunday. Willie Fritz will be taking the head coaching job at Houston, which good for him, right? He's going to the P5. He's getting P5 resources there at Houston. I think he has a chance to be really successful there. Tough week for Tulane, right? You lose your conference championship, you lose your head coach, you're likely losing Michael Pratt to the NFL draft. What is Tulane's outlook, for the American next year?
Well, when they were hiring Willie Fritz, that program was not very successful. Like it was not in a great
No.
spot there. The thing is you are in a good area, right? Louisiana and Southeast has plenty of talent to go around, right? With the transfer portal, you can hit on some guys that are maybe frustrated at some higher level Power Five programs and give them an opportunity to get playing time there at Tulane. Um, so the good part about it is like Willie Fritz built you into a way better job now than you were 3 years ago. The other downside is like you have to hit another home run higher like you did with Willie Fritz. I don't know who it's going to be, but you want a guy that can be able to win with not as superior talent, right? As you're going to have. I do think the AAC is getting weaker with SMU leaving as well. It's going to be UTSA, and Memphis, right, battling out there. And obviously some other teams can rise to the top there as well. But it sounds like those are the three teams, right, that are, leading up to it. Do you go in-house? Do you look out of house? Do you stay in the AAC? Decisions for that athletic department to make. And then that's obviously going to be a big one because we know how important a head coach hire is at a major college football program.
Yes, absolutely. So do you think there's a job that Rhett Lashlee would take over SMU, like that could be open next year? Or do you think because I mean, people were talking about early on, people were talking about him for like A&M job, right? And there were other jobs too. But I was thinking like, dude, this is a Power Five. Like this is now a Power Five job, like a very, very
SMU
good
is a good
job.
job.
So I was thinking like, do you think
SMU is
there
a
could
better
be?
job than Mississippi State.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The money's probably not as good, but it's a
It
better
might it
job.
might be. It might be. Dude, those alum, dude, they pay. Those boosters, they have a good program there.
It's a
I wish
private
it like
school,
do
right?
you think there's any jobs? Yeah, it's private school. I mean you have to pay bukus of dollars to go there. Do you think there's a job that potentially opens up next year that Red Lashley would be on the watch list for?
Billy Napier with Florida.
Like, dude,
Like I
I
think he
just
would
was
be
thinking that. I was just thinking that.
like that'd be real. Obviously, Arkansas with Sam Pittman that comes to mind. If what's his if Stoops decides to leave Kentucky, right? Um, for whatever reason, like that's a possibility. To me, he feels like a SEC Big 12, kind of coach. I don't see him quite entering up into the Big 10, although the money is good enough, like people will follow. But I think his ties are just so well known down south that I think he'll stay down there and really work his way up from that, right? In the Big 12, maybe I don't know. I mean, if yeah, I really don't. Like SMU is a really good job, I think, and they're going to an ACC conference where they're getting a pay raise, and in an area in an era where NIL matters, like I think they have a pretty darn good NIL situation for a G5 program, and now that it's only going to get even better after a conference championship, moving to a higher level conference. Yeah, yeah, I love it all around for Rhett Lashley. I'm happy for him and happy for this program. I think what college football, like if you were alive back then, right, like you understand, like SMU was awesome. Like obviously, I before my time, but I read about it, I've heard about it. Like SMU was really really good, and obviously, it's going to help to distribute that talent in Texas if you have another team in state, right, that's playing at a high level that can pluck maybe a guy or two away from somebody, which just evens out college football in general.
Go to the Mountain West. Let's talk Boise State. Let's talk UNLV. Let's talk. This line was at -2.5. We were both on Boise State to win and to cover without a head coach. They ran for 300 yards. UNLV, the front seven. Look, after I watched the San Jose State game, and I've been hyping up the UNLV front seven all year. I had been doing that, but I watched the San Jose State game, and I just couldn't do it because I'm like, man, this Boise State team, they have the man meat to deal with that front seven, and they got the boys in the backfield, and that includes Taylor Green, who, by the way, if you haven't watched that play, that dude is explosive, man. That dude is explosive, and I've been waiting for it, man. He's so good. I'm still gonna be riding high on the Taylor Green train for as long as he's playing college football.
Well,
Uh,
if as hopefully it's still at Boise State if you're a Boise State Bronco fan. The thing is like this is the Taylor Green you mentioned, you talked about it. He only throws the ball 15 times and he's super efficient in it. They hit big plays and he uses his leg. You ride Ashton Janty and George Halani. Like that was the recipe for success for Boise State. And they got away from it at times this year. And
yeah,
it bit them in the butt. And that's ultimately probably the reason why they're without a head coach right now. But they got back to it once the interim coach comes in. It's Spencer Danielson, I believe his name, the D coordinator.
yep,
So it'd be interesting to see what they do there with that coaching job. But
yeah.
I
The
love it. I
only
mean, how many times have you seen an interim head coach win a championship because of a firing?
dude, I don't know. I'm not old enough to really remember. There's probably some out there that we're not even thinking of, like maybe guys that got fired for situations and whatnot. But
But not because of performance. Like that's the crazy part.
no. So like, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Boise State does. I think they got a lot of options. Look, and they don't have to be careful. I think they can take their time now with this because look, Gatlin Bear decommitted. I think that ship has sailed. Right. Sorry, Boise State fans. That's just what it is. Uh, I would just take your time and just more importantly get the hire right. Not a guy that's necessarily going to keep the roster together right away, or a guy that's going to bring in a guy like Gatlin Bear right away. Just get a guy that's the right hire. You're going to win ball games in the Mountain West if you're really well coached because you are already more talented than this entire conference that you're in right now. Look, and that includes UNLV has done a fantastic job this year. Credit Barry Odom, man. That awesome. And also, I will say this about Jordan Miava. Dude, he made some mistakes early. Dude, and he, as a freshman, right, redshirt freshman, I believe, still got after it and made throws with confidence. I respect him a lot for that. Like, look, and I don't agree necessarily with the whole tampering thing and whatnot, but like there's some teams up in the Northwest that are losing some quarterbacks. I would not be surprised if a friend of a friend of a friend is contacting his dad, saying, "Hey, look, there might be a spot at Oregon for you or Washington State." He is that good, dude. I think he made some mistakes, but some of that is like he had to make those. Like he had that one fumble that was pretty brutal, and that kind of like just derailed everything, especially like interceptions, man. Like it was a pretty rough first half for him in terms of turnover wise, but he still is the main reason why that team moves the ball at all. And I have a lot of respect for him. He is a very good football player. So I'm excited. I don't have actually here you go. I have the bowl games pulled up right here. UNLV is playing Kansas.
Kansas. But they're on the West Coast, right? They're in Arizona, not too far from Vegas. But
Yeah,
yikes, that's
that's a tough draw. I mean, look, and
it's
the
a
thing is though, it's a tough run game to stop, but I think UNLV's front seven's fast enough to deal with it. So we'll see how that goes. And then Boise State is the Mountain West Conference champions. They are going to play UCLA in Myrtle Beach.
Or no,
That
in LA.
Oh, LA Bowl. That's right. Sorry, Myrtle is Georgia Southern Ohio. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong game. That's a good matchup too, man. UCLA's run defense has been absolutely bonkerish this year. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what Boise State's able to do. And to see if like there's a coaching change by then. I don't know. I don't
Probably
know.
gonna have a higher. You'll probably have a higher. Well, maybe yeah. You'll probably have a higher in a couple weeks. I do think if Garbers comes back healthy for that game, this is a different UCLA team, but also like Boise
Well,
State's
Dante
playing really
Moore.
damn
Dante
good.
Moore, he's in the transfer portal. I don't believe he's going to be playing in that bowl game. So, look, something to monitor. That's the thing you got to monitor about these bowl games. Why you need to be staying tuned to Redshirt Soft because, look, there's injuries. There's bowl like the bowl transfer portal exodus is about to happen tomorrow when you guys are watching this video, December 4th. That's when it gets crazy. I mean, look, tonight as we're recording this, Walter Nolan just entered the transfer portal. Like that, there are some large names that are fixing to get in the portal this year. And well, gotta stay tuned to Redshirt Soft. We'll keep you guys updated. But any other thoughts on this game or future of these programs?
Yeah, I love the way UNLV's. Obviously, this season was a success. We saw that they had maybe an easier path to the Mountain West, right, than some other teams, but they got it done to beat Air Force when they had to, and they made it here in year one at Barry, which is just super incredible. And obviously, Boise State's expectation every year is Mountain West championship or bust, and they got it done. And I'm really happy for them. I really am. I would love to see San Jose State. I think them playing Coastal Carolina without McCall, it's a really interesting game. I do think San Jose State's pretty playing really good football right now. Obviously, in a month, 18 practices, it changes a lot of things. But
Yeah.
regardless, at the
No,
Mountain West,
I yeah,
you
and I
add
think
in.
like the core of this UNLV defense too is like gonna be there next year. I'm pretty like Jonathan Woodard. I'm pretty sure. Sorry, Jackson Woodard has eligibility left. Quinn Moden has eligibility left. Marcel McDuffie has eligibility left. Jonathan Baldwin. I mean, just let's keep these guys in house and let's run it back, Rebels. How about that? Let's all run it back.
It's going
See
to be
what you guys can
retention.
do.
And in a transfer portal era, you mentioned it, like tampering happens. That's the unfortunate reality of a program like both these programs, where like if you have a player that has a really successful year, awesome. Like that's very good. Got to make sure he's on your roster for next year because otherwise, like you get plucked there. Ricky White is another guy, like the wide receiver. He's still got eligibility there. I know there's going to be some teams looking for a guy like him on their roster, as everybody needs a guy like him. But
Yeah, or
yeah,
NFL teams. I mean,
I guess he
I
is a
don't know.
junior too. Yeah,
Yeah,
upperclassman there that
he's a
could
junior, and
declare for sure.
he's got the size too. 6'1", 190. I mean, he's got the size.
The future of the Mountain West is interesting though, with Washington State and Oregon State
Oregon
obviously doing
State.
their little agreement. Yeah, so it'll be interesting there.
Yeah, they don't want to
This
be
was a fun conference all
affiliated with
year
the
though.
Mountain West, but they're yeah, it'll be some extra tough games, some games that I'll be interested. I'll be tuned in for those.
Yeah, I do think this was a fun conference all year. I know me and you, we had a great time. You
We
guys
covered
had a lot of
so many. We
support
covered
for.
way more Mountain West games than we thought we were going to cover this year. This is an awesome conference to watch and cover.
That's a credit to the Mountain West for putting on good football and entertaining football and down the stretch in November, but also to you guys. Like you guys showed support on the Mountain West videos, and we thought we'd do some more for you guys. And so yeah, let us know. Give us a subscription if you are new and you enjoy our content. Well, obviously not done talking about the Mountain West. There's next year in the off season and whatnot. So yeah, if you're here, we thank you guys for watching. And
Troy versus App State. Troy was laying 5.5 when we were picking this game. I believe the line dropped down to 5. It was never a doubt, right? App State, look, they had a really good year, like coming back after dropping they were what, 3-4. They came back and won the next 5 straight games to make it to the Sun Belt Conference Championship, including a win against James Madison. Yeah, how about that? And got a nice commenter on YouTube as well. I'll give you a shout out. Eric Sedful uh, gave me a great rundown of App State's like past historically. I believe they have less than like 10 games in like the last like 8 years where they have uh lost by more than a touchdown. And let me see if I can find some of those games. Yeah, Clemson, Georgia, Miami, Louisiana when they were really good with Billy Napier, Texas State, Coastal Carolina, but off of like a late pick six, Miami again. But the common denominator with all of those games, they were on the road. And this was in Troy. Gunnar Watson was dealing. Kamani Vidal was electric. And we knew his App State run defense was potentially vulnerable. And boy, they were. Boy, they were. Also, too, as good as App State's offense has been with Aguilar and Roberts and Norwell, or Nate Noel, sorry. Uh, yeah, sorry, not
It's
that's a name drop for sure. Sorry, Nate Noel, you didn't deserve that at all. Uh, you in fact ran all over Texas A&M when we played you guys, so shout out to you. But yeah, I mean, Kamani Vidal with let me just get the stats up here: 233 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. What are we talking about here? This was domination. 49-23 was the final score. Any thoughts on this game for you?
yeah, it kind of played out like we thought it was gonna. Obviously, we mentioned Troy being able to run the ball. App State's offense, yes, they were gonna be able to put up points at times, but like Troy, Gunnar Watson was finding his groove. We also kind of count out Kamani Vidal. Like he was awesome. And Troy is just a really, really good coach team, has the superior talent, and they're at home. And like that's a recipe for disaster. Like App State ran into a buzzsaw, and Troy has been in that all year. I
Been
like they have,
so good, dude. They've been so good.
yeah, they lost to Kansas State and James Madison early in the year, and since then they've got it right, and they have been basically untouchable in the Sun Belt since then. And now a rematch against James Madison would have been awesome, but App State earned their way into that place. In my opinion, they beat James Madison, right? So like App State is obviously deserving to be there. Both these teams had a very, very successful year. Going to turn your attention to the bowl game, right? Troy, I believe, plays Georgia Tech, which is awesome. That's actually a really, really good matchup there in
Right.
the
Oh
Birmingham
yeah, yeah.
Bowl.
Wait, where do they play Duke? Or did they switch that last minute? Oh yeah, they
Oh, I'm
played
not
Georgia
too.
Tech. You're right. You're right. No,
I
no,
think
you're
it's.
right.
I think it. Okay,
It's
awesome.
Georgia
And
Tech.
then App State. I'm trying to find them. I had it written down.
Oh, they play Miami, Ohio. What an absolute showdown right there.
Oh, yeah. I knew. Yeah, that's right. I knew I liked that game. And then obviously, like keep your coaches. Like I'm not too worried about Sean Clark in App State. I believe he is a for lifer. We talked about there. He is a mountaineer through and through. But John Summerall has been at the top of plenty of very good Power Five head coaching jobs, and deservingly so because of the success he's built at Troy. But he seems happy there, and the Sun Belt is on the up. We talked about it. We covered him a lot this year. Like there's going to be a
Way on
gap
the up.
there with SMU leaving and those three other teams leaving the AAC last year. The Sun Belt is right there to become the fifth best conference in football, and I don't think that they might already be that, right? But they got 12 teams going bowling.
Look, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that Troy is the best G5 team out there this year. I think they're better than Liberty. Not because Liberty's bad. I think Liberty just look. We don't have a lot to base it off of, right? Based on the competition that they've played,
Yeah.
right? And we'll talk about Liberty, and they played awesome, and they've had a great year. And I think Jamie Chad was an awesome coach. I think Troy, that if you were to ask me, like if there was a college football playoff committee for just G5 schools, right? I'm putting in Troy potentially at number one.
Troy SMU, I've also, very
Yeah.
respectful this year as well. But yeah, James Madison deserves to be up there as well. Yeah, that just speaks to the strength of John Summerall and what they've done here at Troy. Obviously, we talked about it with the Mountain West teams, right? Boise State and UNLV and everyone else. Like roster retention is everything in college football right now. If you are a program like this, like keep guys in house, find ways to keep them in the G5 level. We saw some talented receivers, Torrey Horton, and Malachi Corley like stay in the G5 ranks, and like we saw that did wonders for their teams at times this year. That's what you have to do if you're Troy and App State and everybody else in the Sun Belt as well, because there's plenty of teams in the SEC to left, or to the west of you in the Big 12, and obviously everywhere in the country that wants guys like your guys on your team because of the success that you've had there, coaching, recruiting, and developing them.
I agree. But look, App State still going to be a good ball club year in and year out. Right? They looks like they got a guy over there at quarterback. So I'm excited to see what they do in the years to come. Aguilar does have eligibility, of course. So does Kanye Roberts as a freshman. And I don't know. Noel feels like he's been there for a while. He's still got eligibility. What do you know? So look, the seems like the core of this team, Caden Robinson still has eligibility as well. I mean, look, the core of this offense is still there, right? It's going to be a good ball club next year, I think.
Let's fix that run defense. You know, we thought we fixed it, and obviously Troy is going to run the football, and a lot of teams in the Sun Belt. But for next year, like that's going to be obviously, and Shot Clock knows it. He knew it early in the year. They changed some things. They threw some players, threw a bunch of wet piece of paper at the wall, and see what stuck. You know, like that's what they did, and it did for a while. And credit that coaching staff and those players for fighting. But when you run into a buzzsaw like Vidal, like Troy on the road, like the dam might break, and it did in that fourth quarter because it was a game. It was a game, right, going in that fourth quarter, and the floodgate just opened.
Yeah, look, stay tuned because look, Sunbelt has the most teams going bowling. So if you're a Sunbelt guy, we're gonna cover every single bowl game. So if you're a Sunbelt guy, make sure you're here at the Redshirt Sophomore to see it all. To see it all. Miami, Ohio versus Toledo. I thought this was a great game because I love a team with a backup quarterback that plays gritty defense. And they've been doing it all year. And you know what? Let's also shout out Miami Hub. I'm not going to say that they're the best team in the country, but they are the second best team in the country. ATS on the year, 10-3 they were covering at. And I was on Miami of Ohio to cover this game, the 7.5. I did take Toledo to win. You took Toledo to win and cover. So what were some things in this game that led to Toledo's demise ultimately?
Just out coaching. I thought like Kendall's a good coach, right? He's built a really good roster there, but Miami, Ohio, and that staff has done wonders. And they threw the ball 16 times because they didn't have to throw more than that. And they used Smith in the legs. They got creative with Rashad Amos running the football. That front seven played very well. I mean, you held it in two of the most dynamic players in the MAC, in Taquan Finn and Penny Boone, in check, right? And Finn got his, but it was a very inefficient day for him. And obviously the turnover costed them. So 2 turnovers for Finn. I mean, Redhawks just doing their thing. And then that fourth quarter was awesome. I mean, classic Miami Redhawk football,
Yeah, I mean, shout out Chuck Martin there. I mean, dude, he's been there for a while, right? He's been there almost 10 years. Before that, he was at Notre Dame. I mean, he's coached some pretty decent places. I think he has a losing record overall as a Miami, Ohio head coach. But look, it's got to feel good to win the MAC, especially when you had a team like Toledo, who arguably is one of the best G5 teams in the entire country. We were looking at metrically and what they've been able to do against all types of competition. They've just been awesome. And this Miami Ohio defense, dude, they swarm, dude. They swarm. I think before the season, if you would ask me, like, we didn't preview this team specifically this year. Hopefully we can get to that next year while because we made this podcast in June. So we didn't really have a whole lot of time to put stuff together. But hopefully we can have some stuff on Miami, Ohio, and Toledo for next year. I would have told you that this team is a good team and that they return a lot of talent, but I would have told you a lot of it relied on Brett Gabbert. But guess what? Through the adversity, through it all, they prevailed and they found ways to put the ball in the end zone. Dude, and I'll say this. Smith is not a good quarterback at all. He's not. He doesn't make the throws that Brett Gabbert makes. He doesn't make any throws, if you're being honest. Amos does a good job running the ball. What Miami Ohio does, they take care of the football and they take away the football and they play the field position game. So that's what you got to do sometimes. And Mac, it's been awesome this year. And it's really cool to see a team like Miami win 11 games. And in some of the fashion that they did, I think they scored like over 30 points. Let's see, against uh MAC opponents, they only did it like twice. That was against Ohio and then against Western Michigan. So other than that, they were just doing it just in a gritty fashion, which I love, man. Gotta respect that. So I'm a big fan of that.
Miami, Ohio unders were pretty generous to us this year, I do believe. But about the game though, like the two block field goals was crazy. Even though the one of them they still got the first down on it. Or Toledo, they picked it up
Yeah.
and they ran for the 2 yards. It didn't matter. It was the end of the game. And they threw a pick a couple plays later, but just Mac. It's just Mac for you. And this was awesome. I mean, really happy
Yeah.
for Miami, Ohio. They deserve it after it's tough. This was the weekend of backup quarterbacks, by the way. Backup quarterbacks, I believe, went 3-1, right? And the only one that lost was Deacon Hill. Okay. You had the Florida State third stringer, Miami, Ohio backup, and SMU backup. All three of those teams, right? Obviously, it was not pretty for all three of them, but they got it done. And that's the thing is like we talked about it, like football is more than the quarterback, right? Like you need a quarterback to be elite for sure, but like to win a singular football game, a lot can happen. If you got good coaching and good talent around you.
Yeah, I agree. You can do a lot. And look, another guy that people don't think about a lot, like when you're previewing this game, it's really easy to overlook. Alec Bevelheimer. If you don't know who that is, it's Miami of Ohio's punter. Top 12 in the country in average punt yardage per punt. And look, he did it again this game, punted 4 inside the 20. Look, if you're Miami of Ohio, you have great defense. Do the Iowa thing, play the field position, right? Get those punts, move up and down the field slowly, slowly, slowly. And occasionally you're going to have drives or turnovers that help you put the ball in the end zone. So I love it for Miami. I love it. They deserve it. I love it. Want to see like not that Miami of Ohio is like a new MAC team, but like it's good to see like other MAC teams that aren't necessarily Toledo, Ohio, Northern Illinois, like your classics that we've seen in the last like 6 Western Michigan, the classic teams that we see in the last 7 or 8 years that have won it. Uh, yeah, feed me Miami of Ohio. I love that. New Mexico State Liberty playing the CUSA game of the day. I mean, well, it's on the same day as a Pac-12 game, but you get what I'm saying. This game was electric for one reason: offense. Liberty did not punt the whole game. Yep, you heard that right. Final score was 49-35. CD and I, you and I were both on Liberty minus 10.5, and they covered definitely. Something that had to do with Diego Pavia going down in that game. That hurts, of course. I do think that does not change the outcome in terms of Liberty winning that game. I still think Liberty wins that game. Like they had 3 possessions where they did not score a touchdown. When they needed out at the end of the first half, in the second quarter, they turned it over on downs, I believe, driving after they had a 70-yard drive. And then at the end of the game, they drove another 70 yards and ran out the entire clock in the fourth quarter. So other than that, Liberty scored a touchdown on every single possession. Caden Salter was absolutely incredible, continuing to show the world that he is absolutely a very, very good quarterback. I don't think he transfers out of there. I think he does the Grayson McCall, sticks with Jamie Chadwell because Jamie Chadwell just does that with quarterbacks, makes him look awesome. Caden Salter did it in the air and did it on the ground, 165 on the ground and a touchdown, as well as 319 through the air, 2 tutters. So absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. But New Mexico State deserves the love. 10-4. Come on. A double-digit win season for the Aggies. That is snaps all around. Snaps all around. So any thoughts on these two teams in the game, future outlook, uh, bowl game look ahead before before we cover those?
I mean, there was a clear talent gap here, edge on Liberty, and that was reflected in the box score. I'm not in the box score. Sorry, in the final score, and then as well as the Vegas line. But credit New Mexico State, like they Liberty, like they could just score whenever they wanted to. And New Mexico State battled and battled and battled. until it was too late. Blaze Berlitz did his best at the end there, but it wasn't enough. And credit Jerry Kill though. You mentioned 10-4 is an incredible record for New Mexico State. They're playing in the New Mexico Bowl, I believe, against Fresno State. And then Liberty obviously gets the New Year's Six Bowl. Like the CUSA, probably the worst conference in college football, has a New Year's Six Bowl game, which is awesome. And they might get blown out. The line might be 20 something, whatever. But Liberty has got a chance to show Caden Salter, Jamie Chadwell. They'll be on the national stage for a little bit. It'll be fun
The
there.
line is
I
at
think
line's at 15.5.
that's it. Ooh, I'm gonna. Well, it's hard in the bowl games, I guess. But if Bo Nix is playing, regardless, we'll talk about the game when we get there. But it's about Liberty right now, and the future of Liberty football is really, really good. I don't think Chadwell is going anywhere. I think he's got a really good job there, where they're going to continue to have more and more talent than everybody else in the CUSA. As long as things don't change there, they welcome in, I believe, is Kennesaw State is coming in next year to the CUSA in 2024, which is exciting for them. And obviously, we saw how well Jacksonville State, transitioned here, and that was fun for them, obviously, and the CUSA in general. But yeah, both these programs feel like they look pretty well. Got your quarterback, got your coach. Camp can be in a lot worse positions than both of those. We'll see if Jerry Kill stays there. I believe he will. I think it sounds like he will,
I
unless
don't,
he
I
wants
don't
the
know what
Boise
other
State
jobs,
job.
unless like another big job opens up, like from another coach plucking someone. Like
Maybe Boise
I
State. I mean, but that's not.
maybe like I think he's a candidate for sure. But yeah, I think if Jamie Chadwell was going anywhere, I think he would have gone to Mississippi State or Arkansas if that job had opened up. But I looks like those jobs are filled. Well, Arkansas didn't move Sam Pittman at all, but Mississippi State filling with Jeff Levy. So I mean, this was a good game. If you love the offense, you love this game. If you took the over, you love this game even more. If you're like us, you took Liberty minus 10.5, you love this game even more. So good way to end the COSA, which for I think this conference gets a lot of I'm not gonna say hate because everyone loves a little weekday CUSA. But I think in terms of like the level of competition, I think people don't necessarily respect it as much. We'll see though in these bowl games. Like Liberty's playing Oregon. I mean, New Mexico State's playing Fresno State. Jacksonville State's playing Louisiana. Western Kentucky's playing Old Dominion. We'll see. We'll see how these guys stack up. These CUSA teams stack up. So I'm excited for that. I always like that's why I love bowl season too. It's because like there are some teams in G5 that are pretty good, right? And they get a chance to play some Power Five schools, and they don't have as many opt outs as the Power Fives necessarily. It's like you really get a chance to see these G5 teams shine in these bowl games. So I'm
Well, and a lot of times too, like the thing you think about, like Power Five programs. I get it. Where like not every team has this luxury, but like there's generally more depth in a Power Five program than there is in a CUSA or another G5 program. You get 3 weeks to get healthy here, and like that does wonders for these G5 programs that are like, oh god, we need our left tackle back badly. We're starting a true freshman that's not ready to play football at the Division 1 level. Like, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that can just totally wreck your game plan. You get them back, you get things to work on, you get coaching, all this other stuff. Maybe you get those freshmen that came in right underweight. And now you've gotten them accumulated used to Division 1 football, and now they can, really show what they're about. And when to me, I think that's why you mentioned like so many upsets happen in bowl games, because like it almost helps them more than some of these Power Five schools.
yeah, I agree. So I'm a big fan of both these teams. Big fan of what both of these coaches have done. And look, if both of these coaches had accepted the Power Five job after the season, I would not be surprised. I would not have. Sorry, I would not have been surprised. They're both really good coaches in a conference that does not get enough credit. Two programs that do not get enough credit. To be fair, New Mexico State has not had the program success that most every other program has had. But hey, 10 wins at a program like New Mexico State for Jerry Kill, that is unbelievable. Unbelievable. People people do not understand how hard it is to win there, right? And how heavily competitive it is to recruit in the Southwest there. When you got the Arizona schools, you got like even New Mexico State, like you're still gonna get likely out recruited by like UTEP, right? Like in that West, like it's it's tough, man. It's tough, and Jerry Kill is just a really good coach. So glad to see him have that success. And before we sign off, we'll talk college football playoff just for a little bit here. Hear both of our perspectives, both of our predictions. We actually both predicted the same thing. So when we posted on Twitter, Redshirt Sophomore prediction, we meant that it was both of our predictions were the same. We predicted that Michigan was going to be 1, Washington was going to be 2, but we actually predicted that Florida State was going to be 3, and Texas was going to be 4. So what are your thoughts on the college football playoffs that have Michigan at 1, Washington at 2, Texas at 3, and Alabama at 4?
To me, they got it right in terms of they wanted the 4 best teams. They wanted the best semifinal games and TV product to place on it. Like they got that right. Like I don't think most people are arguing about it. The problem I have with it is the process they went about with it, the inconsistencies in the weeks leading up to it in those rankings into your final rankings in this one. And I get it, like you get the final ranking right, like whatever, cool. But you fed us a crap of lies for 6 weeks or whatever it is there every Tuesday night, and you get your committee chair spokesperson to come on and just feed us a bunch of crap, and ended up working out for Bama and Texas for sure. But I got to feel for Florida State, man. Like they did everything we asked them to, and because a couple injuries, they didn't look great in the last 2 weeks. They got left out. The problem is someone was going to get left out no matter what. And the fact that this hasn't happened before, we talked about earlier in the episode, a little bit surprised, but at the same time, like, when was
Okay,
the last time
but
we
you mean like
seen
by people getting left out, a Power Five undefeated conference champion? You mean getting left out?
like a deserved like person like Florida State did nothing all year to say that they do not deserve a chance to get in, right? Like
They
does that
won
make
every
sense?
game as a Power Five team and won the conference.
And they scheduled, which you preached in the early years of the committee. You preached, hey, schedule a big time quality out of conference opponent, and they did 2. They did LSU, and it was their fault. It was not their fault that Florida was terrible this year. We saw that coming, but that's another time. That's whatever. Anyways, um, yeah, that's I'm frustrated about. The thing is like what's awesome about this season and the drama that it was is we we finally had competitive balance in college football, which we haven't had in forever. And it wasn't the 14 playoff that did it. It wasn't the 12 team expanding. I don't think it's a transfer portal, though you could argue that like a couple quarterbacks here in Washington and at Texas, made a big difference there. But like we had from all 4 time zones, we had plenty of contenders. 5 teams that deserve to in only 4 spots. Someone's gonna be left out. If Bama got left out, like I would be extremely upset because they went out and scheduled an elite opponent, a team that you deemed to be a top 4 team, and they lost to them, whatever. And then they ran their conference. They beat the number 1 team in the country on the way to do so. It's just a tough situation. I thought they just set themselves up for failure with a 14 playoff. We talked about it earlier. I know your thoughts on the 6 team was better than 4, which is better than 12, which
Not
is
as good as 2.
not as good as 2. Thank you. Exactly. And this year, like, I wouldn't mind the BCS. Like, Michigan and Washington are like those teams deserve to be in. Like I don't know. I'm excited for the semifinal games. Don't get me wrong. But I just feel bad for Florida State. Like it is what it is. It just sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah, it does. I think the committee was screwed. They were screwed, and of course, like it's not their like the committee. They're not like they're not the NCAA, right? So they're not the ones who made the 14 playoff, right? So they're not to blame for this mess that they were put in. But like you said, that they could have done some things leading up to be more consistent with their rankings, of course, to uh, give a more transparent view into what they're actually looking at, right? And feels like this year, right? And it's different committees every year, right? So they have a set their temples of what they're founded on, right? Like what they're supposed to be looking at. But generally, you have a different committee every year. So what is this year's committee value? Well, they really value uh quality wins, super quality wins. I mean, like you put the four best teams in the playoff, and those are the four best teams that had the four best wins all year, right?
Yeah, with Ohio State, with Michigan beating Ohio State, Washington beating Oregon twice, Texas beating Bama, and Bama beating Georgia. Like, yeah,
So and I love that. I actually really really love that. The problem is that they were not consistent leading up into this week, right? They had Oregon ranked ahead of Bama and Texas for a long time. Um, yeah, and for that matter, they had Michigan at number one for a little bit there, and they did not have a ton of, quality. So it was the inconsistencies that led up into that, right? I will say it sucks that Florida State did not get in because I think they, like you said, they like you can't ask them to do much more, right? Can't ask them to really do any more besides just look better. But it is just it is the four best teams, right? And look, that it's completely subjective, which what people have to remember. It is completely subjective to say who are the four best teams, right? So when the committee was founded and when they made the 14 playoff, they said they came up with criteria, right? What do they look? How do you measure how good a team it looks like? But I think like there's certain things that have certain weights to it, right? It's not uh, like things are weighted differently, and things are like when they're weighted so heavily on one factor, right? Like it can impact how you look at another factor. There's just so much that goes into it. I think the committee was screwed, so I'm not going to say that there are people saying that this is the worst playoff committee we've ever had. I don't know. I don't know if I would necessarily say that. I think you're right though. To say that they were misleading leading up into this week is an understatement. But ultimately, I don't think they got the four best teams in the country because I think Georgia is one of the four best teams. But I think they did fine. I don't know that's going to be controversial comments. You guys can absolutely rail me in the comments there. Let me know if you're watching on YouTube. On Spotify, you can honk your horn at the car next to you if you're listening to this on the way to work or something. Just I don't know. We move on. I'm excited to see some of those teams in bowl games. Oregon playing Liberty, Florida State playing Georgia, Georgia playing Florida State. Uh, yeah, let's see it, man. Let's see how these teams respond, and then we'll see what it looks like when we have a 12 team playoff, and you know, teams like Bama and Georgia end up playing each other three times in a season, or Ohio State, Michigan end up playing each other three times in a season. We'll see how people like it then, and then no one's left out, or a team like I don't know, say Ole Miss is in the college football playoffs, they won't feel left out. We'll see. We'll see how they do. We'll see how they do.
I know, but you nailed it there. I think that's pretty spot on. I do want to add one thing where it's like in a vacuum, if you look at these four teams and you watch them play, you look at their resumes, like all four of them make very, very good cases to be in the playoffs. Like if you're arguing that Florida State should have been in, it's not because these other teams didn't deserve to be in. It's because you feel Florida State also deserved to be in, which is totally okay. Like it's not everything's not, roses. Like it's sports. There's a winner and a loser. And in this case, like it sucks. The only thing I do worry about for the future of college football, right? In the future of the ACC, I talked about it earlier. If you were listening to the full video, this might be the last straw with Florida State in the ACC because they were just told right in front of everybody else that you went 13-0 and your conference is not respected at all. That's not your fault. It's because Clemson had a down year, because North Carolina choked, and it was not even because you had bad out of conference like wins. You had like, I'm sorry, you beat Florida, right? You beat LSU, and just yourself. You Clemson beat Notre Dame. You had
Yeah.
UNC beating South Carolina. Like you had respected wins. It's just like it just does not like the ACC just does not get the respect the SEC did and the Big 12 this year.
Now
And
the ACC went 10-9 out of conference. And they believe they went what was it, 6-4 against the SEC or something like that, out of conference. It's so
one of
hard
them is
though.
a,
Like
is a Wake win over Vandy.
I like the argument, and you have to have some kind of like out of conference games have to matter, right? But just to say, oh, like the ACC went 6-4 against the SEC or the Pac-12 went 7-3 in their Power Five out of conference games. I just don't think just those numbers themselves tell the full story. So I
No.
don't love that argument, and I hear it all the time. Uh, I mean, two of uh two of the ACC's wins against the SEC out of conference games were teams that finished over 500, right? So it's like, you know, what are you gonna do? And then there's another story that says, well, your ACC runner up got absolutely torched by Devin Leary's Kentucky and at home and lost, which is a team that Bama beat by 40, and you could play that tit for tat game all you want, right? Just like, but when it comes down to, you gotta evaluate the teams. Just evaluate teams. That's what we do. It's hard. It really, really is hard to do. And there's gonna be a bajillion different arguments, bajillion different transitive properties that tell you this or tell you that. Uh, the reality is, we saw the reaction of the Michigan players in their locker room when they saw that Alabama came on their screen instead of Florida State. That tells me that the committee did all right.
Yeah.
So
Let's
people
leave
don't
it
like that.
as
I
that. Like
don't
that's
love that. I don't love that. Like, in terms of like you said, the health of the sport, the health of the conferences. I don't love that. And I think this 14 playoff accelerated conference realignment for sure, as well as, the new media deals as well. But I think the 14 playoffs had a lot to do with that. Just sucks, man. 14 playoff just is not the best at all. Make
yeah,
it
and
six team or make it none.
yeah, real quick, I do want to say like I'm not upset about it. Like four at the end of the day, four teams got in that deserved to get in. Leave it at that. Like, yes, other teams got screwed, sure, but four teams got in that deserved to be in, and that are physically good enough to be in like top four teams in the country, top five teams in the country, and also have top five resumes as well, and eye test.
I agree. I agree. Well, that's enough of that. That's the end of the Redshirt Sophomore 2023 Conference Championship recaps. We will be getting into coaching carousel. We will be getting into transport. We will be getting into recruiting. We will be getting into bowl game previews. All of that. If you just stay tuned, if you like the content, like the video, it's a simple rule that we have on here. And be sure to subscribe. Look, we're on our way, hopefully 200 pretty soon here. We love your guys' support. It's why we do it. It's been awesome all year. It's been awesome. Let's keep the momentum going into December. Let's keep it rolling into January. Let's just keep moving. We're excited. This is our first year covering college football the way that we are right now. And it's been an absolute blast. So thank you guys for everything. I know CD and I have enjoyed this a ton. It's a great thing. We're both in school right now, and school stinks. All right. But having you guys has been awesome. So anything from you, CD?
No, you said it exactly. And thank you guys so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this year. I hope you enjoyed this episode and hope you enjoyed our support or our videos all year long. We do appreciate you guys more than you would know. And we want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. And we will see you guys in the next one.